Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. Here are the headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. We told you first, and it is now official. Hindalco's US subsidiary is heading to Wall Street, files draft papers for a $1 billion IPO. Sources say Hindalco is eyeing a valuation of $15 billion for Novelis. Rajiv Jain, a GQG partner, says the valuation in India may be a bit extended, but they're not crazy. Adds India's corporate earnings growth is the best among emerging markets for 5 years. GQG's investments were $22 billion in India. Jain says they would have liked to buy LIC shares, but couldn't find any block deals last year. The big exclusive. 48 hours ahead of a scheduled extraordinary general meeting to oust him, Baiju Ravindran says the $200 million rights issue has been fully subscribed. Also offers to restructure the board of the crisis-hit company. Investors who own 30% stake in the firm have called for a shareholder meeting on Friday to remove Ravindran as CEO and revamp the board. The sensex and the nifty hit record highs in early trade, but a late sell-off wipes out the gains. IT stocks lead the decline, mid-caps underperform.
In a country that has been a long part of our history, over 90 years here in India, and today it is one of the beating hearts of the Shell company.
The global CEO of Shell, Vail Savant, says India is one of the beating hearts of the company and a core hub for talent and innovation. With 350 retail sites, Shell is looking at a methodical approach to increase its presence after already investing $5 billion. That's another exclusive. One protesting farmer is dead and several injured after Haryana police resumes firing tear gas shells using drones in an attempt to halt their march to Delhi. The government says it is ready for the next round of talks, but farmers demand a statement from the Prime Minister or the Home Minister providing legal guarantee on minimum support price. The US vetoes a UN resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza for the third time, says it would undermine negotiations over a hostage deal. UK abstains from voting even as all other members vote in favour of a ceasefire. The India bloc finalises a seat-sharing agreement on UP. Congress will fight from 17 seats, including Raebareli, Amethi and Varanasi, among others. Samajwadi Party and other allies will contest from 63 seats. Akhilesh Yadav says all is well within the alliance. There is no conflict. Eminent jurist and advocate Fali Nariman passes away at the age of 95. In a legal career spanning 7 decades, Nariman handled nearly 13,000 cases. Prime Minister Modi calls him an outstanding legal mind. Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, pays tribute, calling Nariman a giant of an intellectual. India Inc. is likely to roll out an average salary hike of 9.5% this year, according to the AON Salary Survey. Manufacturing sector to offer the highest increase, followed by life sciences and financial services. As always, straight to the day's market action. The Nifty and the Sensex hitting record highs in early trade, but failed to hold on to their gains. The Nifty slipped nearly 200 points from the peak. The decline was led by IT stocks. The mid-caps also underperformed the blue chips today. So that's the Nifty down 0.5%. The Sensex losing 0.5% too. The Nifty Bank flat, but down 70 points. The Nifty mid-cap index lost a little more than 1% today. But the big corporate story we told you first, and it is now official. Hindalco's US subsidiary, Novelis, has filed papers to launch a $1 billion IPO on Wall Street. Sources tell us that Hindalco is eyeing a valuation of $15 billion. Nisha standing by with the details. Nisha, you broke the story. Now official. Take us through the plan.
That's right. It's a significant development for an Indian conglomerate, Aditya Birla Group, and not just that, for India Inc. on the whole. We are talking about the announcement of Novelis US IPO plans. And remember that Novelis is the 100% owned subsidiary of the flagship company of Aditya Birla Group, Hindalco. Now, what we are talking about here is probably the first large listing by an Indian-owned company in the US, and the second one in terms of significance in the overseas market, next only to the Bharti Group, another large conglomerate, and their Airtel Africa, you will remember, is listed in the UK. Giving that context, let's go into the specifics. Sources with direct knowledge have shared with CNBC TV 18 that Hindalco could be looking at valuation expectations in terms of the equity valuation for Novelis from this particular IPO at close to about $15 billion. billion. Now, of course, that depends on the kind of appetite that the investors have and also capital market condition in the US. What I also gather from sources with direct knowledge is that Hindalco is looking at raising about $1 billion from the IPO of Novelis, which means that it could be selling a minority stake. Now, the announcement also had included that the entire IPO will be a secondary sale of shares by Hindalco. So the entire money from the IPO, the proceeds would be coming to Hindalco. Experts also point out that it would be helpful for the increased capex requirements for Hindalco and in terms of stabilizing the debt equity levels as well with this particular value unlocking. On the other hand, remember, confidential submission also empowers Novelis to go ahead and kickstart the process of this particular IPO. Of course, it is dependent on the process being completed and also getting the market appetite for the valuations, these valuations and this particular asset. So in the next few months, there is every likelihood of the launch depending on the market condition in the US. We reached out to Hindalco for comments on the specifics of this IPO plan. We did not receive a comment from them.
All right, Nisha, many thanks for joining us. Now, valuations in India may be a bit extended, but they're not crazy. And that's the word coming in from Rajiv Jain of GQG Partners, which has invested $22 billion in India. In an exclusive conversation with CNBC TV 18, Jain said that India's corporate earnings growth has been the best among emerging markets in the last 5 years. Also revealed that GQG would have liked to buy LIC's shares, but couldn't find a block deal last year.
If you look at the larger markets, Indonesia, India, Brazil, Mexico, and so on and so forth, India, I feel, is one of the best earnings growth stories. So if you leave aside everything, simply look at corporate earnings growth over the last 5 years, which is basically pre-COVID till today, India has seen one of the best earnings growth amongst all emerging markets as such, right? So far better than Chinese corporate earnings have actually declined. There's always angst about having run up so fast, that there could always be a pause. But if you take a slightly longer term view, I feel that India still has quite a runway. I'm talking about sort of 3-year horizon. So the valuations are maybe a bit extended, but not crazy.
And you can catch that exclusive conversation with GQG's Rajiv Jain at 10:30 p.m. here on CNBC TV 18. The other big story that we are tracking, EdTech startup Baiju's founder and CEO has announced to shareholders that the company's $200 million rights issue has been fully subscribed. Now, in a letter to shareholders with CNBC TV 18 has accessed, Ravindran has urged all investors to take part in the issue. In his words, and I quote, "Participating in this rights issue may seem like a Hobson's choice. However, this is the only viable option in front of us today to prevent permanent value erosion," end of quote. The letter also promises restructuring of the board and the appointment of 2 non-executive directors with the mutual consent of founder shareholders. This, he says, will take place soon after the FY23 audit is completed, which he expects to happen by the end of the current quarter. Ravindran, who claims he's already invested $1.1 billion in his personal capacity into the company over the last 2 years to pay salaries and keep operations going, says that the latest fundraise will help take care of current liabilities and provide sufficient growth capital. He's also called the narrative about the founder having an adversarial relationship with shareholders false, adding that there was nothing to be gained from conflict. Now, this letter comes just days ahead of an EGM proposed by a group of shareholders who together hold 30% of the EdTech company. These shareholders are seeking the removal of Ravindran as CEO and the appointment of a new board. Ritu has accessed the notice of this EGM and joins us now with the latest on the agenda. Ritu, Baiju in his letter suggesting that there is nothing to worry about, there is no conflict that they wish to sort of get into as far as shareholders are concerned. But it's very clear now the likes of Peak, Process, etc. want Ravindran out. Take us through what's on the agenda for the EGM.
A group of investors who collectively hold more than 30% stake in Baiju's have called for an EGM on Friday to remove Baiju Ravindran as the CEO and reconstitute the board, citing several concerns ranging from financial mismanagement to failure to enforce legal rights and a cloak and dagger approach to shareholder information, all of it leading to substantial value loss. There are 7 key items on the agenda for the EGM. The key among them include removing Baiju Ravindran as CEO and also the removal of both Divya Gokulnath and Riju Ravindran from their respective managerial and directorial roles to prevent any further hemorrhaging of shareholder value. The proposal advocates an interim CEO appointment and the enlistment of a search firm to find a new CEO for Baiju's. Board restructuring has emerged as a focal point, with shareholders advocating for a new 9-member board, including a founder, 2 executives from within group companies, 3 shareholders and 3 independent directors. They've also called for shareholder ratification within a month's time to appoint the new board. Other resolutions up for vote include appointing a forensic auditor to scrutinize acquisitions, regulatory compliance and alleged breaches. They also seek to forbid the founders from undertaking any direct or indirect transfer of any shares, rights, titles in any group companies without the shareholder approval. Now, the Prozis and P15-led group of shareholders have also demanded management accountability for the delay in filing financial statements, the strategy for the BCCI insolvency case, response to the ED notice, the failure to resolve issues with Term Loan B lenders, and so on. Now, despite Baiju Ravindran's 11th hour attempt to propose that modest reconfiguration in the board in his letter to shareholders, we understand that investors consider it too little and too late. We're also given to understand that even without the founder Baiju Ravindran joining in for the EGM, these resolutions can legally still be put to vote. So a crucial day, Friday, is going to be for both the fate of the company and its founder.
Ritu, many thanks for joining us. We will be watching those developments very closely. Now, India's Financial Stability and Development Council, or the FSDC, met in the capital today. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman chaired that meeting, which was attended by the RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das, SEBI Chief Madhavi Puri Butch. This is the first meeting in 10 months, and it comes weeks after the RBI's crackdown on Paytm Payments Bank. The FSDC has decided to formulate a strategy to simplify and digitize the KYC process for the financial sector. It's called for constant vigil and proactive efforts towards detecting emerging financial stability risks given the domestic and global macro situation. State Bank of India is now the 5th largest company in India in terms of market cap, standing strong at 6.89 lakh crore rupees. SBI overtook Infosys after rallying more than 20% in February so far. The bank has also reclaimed its spot as the most valued public sector unit last week by overtaking LIC in market valuation. The big newsmaker this evening: India is one of the beating hearts of Shell. That's the word coming in from Vail Savan, the CEO of British energy giant Shell. Speaking to me earlier about Shell's India expansion, Vail Savan said India is a talent and innovation hub for the company. Speaking about energy decarbonization, Savan said Shell is seeking opportunity to invest in India's green hydrogen mission. He also spoke about the slowdown in electric vehicle sales globally, saying he's not particularly worried about the current decline and that EV penetration will take time.
I think firstly, maybe just to sort of say the Indian energy transition is very much aligned with what we see at Shell and what our strategy is. We fundamentally believe in the role of a company like ours in providing energy security at affordable prices, as well as supporting the decarbonization of the energy system. And that's exactly what the Indian government is aiming to do. So we're very, very aligned. I think India serves a few key elements of our strategy. One, it is a core hub for us from a talent perspective. Actually, just recently, India has become the largest Shell population in the entire world. Over 13,000 people, engineers, technologists, AI specialists, all serving the Shell group across all the locations that we have. And so that is really, and that's why I call it the beating heart here, just because of that incredible talent base. It's also a big innovation hub for us. We can continue to develop new ideas here and export them to the world.
IP? Ideas is one thing. IP?
I think IP, ideas, both. We are able to really develop opportunities here because we are seeing a forward-leaning government when it comes to the energy transition. So you can take a lot of that, actually tailor it for the Indian context, and then over time look to export it. But your question around the asset base, I think, firstly, we're proud of the fact that we have spent close to or over $5 billion already in India. So we are starting from a very strong base, and it makes it a good foundation to build off. As we look into the future, we see great opportunities. For example, in the gas value chain. We have a Hazira terminal in Gujarat. That's an opportunity to continue to grow. We are playing, of course, in the power space. We acquired Spring not too long ago, which is a core element of our power strategy. And we continue to invest heavily in that as we broaden the footprint. So there are multiple opportunities to play in the conventional energy space as well as in the low-carbon energy space.
Well, let's talk about the low-carbon energy space, because one of the big bets that you are making is on electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And I know that you're very bullish on growth in China, you're very bullish on growth in Europe as well as the US. Where does India figure in all of that?
I think India has a very important role. So indeed, we are the second largest EV charging player in the world after Tesla. And we're looking at it from a global perspective. You're absolutely right to say we see a lot of momentum at the moment in China. I mean, the penetration of EVs into the overall vehicle pool is close to 35% and expected to be around 50% by 2050. That's both two-wheelers as well as four-wheelers. We also see good momentum in Europe, not as fast as China, and similarly in the US, though not as fast as Europe. So
are you worried about what we are seeing at this point in time with this slowdown across EVs, across geographies that, you know, that's playing out?
I'm not worried. I mean, we look at this as a long-term bet. So what we see is EV costs are coming down. It's going to take time for the penetration to happen. I mean, it's taken decades to be able to get the current car pool that we have, and it'll just take time to be able to get the EV penetration in. What we will do is we will continue to tailor our investments to the areas where we see the most traction. So, for example, if you see the US slowing down a bit, we will potentially ramp up in places like Europe or China or India. And what we see in India is an opportunity to really leverage our existing footprint here, which is around 350 retail sites that have now developed a very strong customer base, where we've developed real operational excellence in the way we market. And I'm really proud of the brand and its recognition here in India. It's one of the countries in the world, arguably, where our brand is recognized and appreciated more than any other country. And that gives us a very, very powerful, I think, asset to be able to build off.
Well, Savan, there, the global CEO of Shell. In international headlines, Israel has stepped up its offensive in Gaza as it plans a full-scale attack on the city of Rafah. The US, meanwhile, has vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. After rejecting the call for the third time, the US has said that a ceasefire undermines the negotiations over the hostage deal. The UK abstained from the vote. The US is the lone vote against the resolution. To the conflict in Ukraine, which is now nearing a 2-year mark, Kyiv has alleged that Russia fired 19 attack drones over the last 2 days. The Ukrainian army has also said there have been more than 80 combat clashes with Russia over the last 24 hours. Unconfirmed reports suggest around 65 Russian soldiers were killed by a Ukrainian missile attack. In Pakistan, two arch rivals in the Pakistan political landscape have joined hands yet again to keep Imran Khan's PTI out of power. Addressing a joint press conference, PPP chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari said Shahbaz Sharif of PML Nawaz has been nominated for the Prime Minister's post. Bilawal's father, Asif Ali Zardari, will be the joint candidate for the office of President. Well, the annual appraisal process will begin at most Indian offices in the next few weeks. As per the findings of AON Salary Increase and Turnover Study, India Inc. expects to dole out a salary hike of 9.5% this year, not much higher than last year. Shivani joins us now with more. Shivani, take us to the key highlights. Which of the sectors leading the way?
Well, AON India's annual salary increase report suggests that Indian professionals might be in for higher single-digit salary hikes in 2024. This projection reflects a slight decrease compared to the actual 9.7% salary increase observed in 2023. On the other hand, the AON survey indicates a positive trend, showcasing a drop in overall attrition rates from 21.4% in 2022 to 18.7% in 2023. Now, let's dive into the sectors taking the spotlight. The manufacturing sector leads the way with the whopping 10.1% expected salary increase in 2024. Following closely, life sciences and financial services are expected to witness a 9.9% salary jump, while global capacity centers are next in line with a projected 9.8% salary rise. The survey also underscores that India continues to dole out the highest salary increase at 9.5% among major economies in the APAC region. In comparison, Australia looks at a 4.1% salary rise, Bangladesh anticipates 7.3% increase, and China aims for a 5.7% salary rise. Meanwhile, Singapore, Philippines and Indonesia fall within the 4 to 5% bracket. Now let's explore the hot skills in demand. Data science and AI and ML maintain their stronghold as the most sought after skills, commanding high salaries. Additionally, niche skills like IoT and VLSI are experiencing a surge in demand.
Shivani, many thanks for joining us. Up next on India Business Hour, eminent jurist and advocate Fali Nariman passes away at the age of 95. We look back at the stellar legal career spanning 7 decades and nearly 13,000 cases. Catch CNBC TV 18's news and updates on Facebook, X, Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. Well, the second leg of the Farmers' Delhi March has reportedly suffered its first casualty. A protester from Bathinda district reportedly succumbed to injuries after clashes with the Haryana police at the Kanori border, according to a report by the Indian Express. However, the Haryana police tweeted at 3:36 p.m. saying that as per the latest information available, no death has been reported. The state police resorted to firing rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse protesters marching towards Delhi. The situation remained tense at the Shambhu border as well. Farmers have rejected the centre's offer for 5-year minimum support price contract for 5 crops. The centre's appealed for a 5th round of talks and said that they are ready to discuss outstanding issues, including MSP, withdrawal of FIRs, among others. However, the farmers have been demanding a statement from the Prime Minister or the Home Minister for a legal guarantee on the minimum support price.
जिन मुद्दे पर हम मिलकर समाधान निकाल सकते हैं, वार्ता के लिए हम तैयार हैं।
एमएसपी गारंटी का कानून बनाने की अनाउंसमेंट कीजिए, तो इसके लिए इसके बाद इस मोर्चे को पीसफुली रखा जा सकता है।
ये तस्वीर आपको दिखा रहे हैं शंभू बॉर्डर पे। रबर बुलेट, युगल पीछे आइए। ये तस्वीरें बहुत खतरनाक है। आगे दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे थे।
Well, that is the Shambhu border there, the Delhi-Haryana border. With months to go for the Lok Sabha polls, the India bloc has finalized a seat-sharing agreement in UP. The Congress will fight from 17 seats, including Raebareli, Amethi and Varanasi, among others. Samajwadi Party and other allies will contest from 63 seats. SP Chief Akhilesh Yadav said all is well within the alliance. There is no conflict. The Congress party has slammed the Income Tax Department's move to temporarily freeze the bank accounts over a 135 crore rupee tax demand. During a hearing at the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, the Congress called the taxman's action an attempt to choke and bar India's largest opposition party from contesting elections. It argued that the taxman showed no sense of proportionality and claimed that the dispute is over cash contribution of 14 lakh crore rupees. The Congress also informed the tribunal that about 65 crores has been withdrawn from its accounts in different banks. The taxman countered, saying that a false narrative has been created. The IT department said the tax demand was first raised in April 2021, adding that opportunities were given to the Congress to comply. Eminent jurist and advocate Fali Nariman has passed away at the age of 95 in a legal career spanning 7 decades. Nariman handled nearly 13,000 cases. Prime Minister Modi calling him an outstanding legal mind. The Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, paying tribute, calling him a giant of an intellectual. Ashmit standing by now to take us through some of the landmark cases that Fali Nariman argued. Ashmit.
Well, to say that Fali Nariman was a doyen of the legal fraternity would be an understating his actual impact that he had on the country. His impact was felt far beyond the courtroom and in the lives of everyday men and women. The country woke up with the sad news of his demise at the age of 95. That the President, the Prime Minister, the CJI, tallest leaders of the opposition parties and the brightest of legal luminaries paid homage gives us some sense of scale on the lives that he touched and the issues that he touched. So let's take a look at some of the most important cases and how that has shaped the modern India that we know today. First, the case of Nanda Bharati case. While he did not directly argue in this case, he did assist another legal legend, that's Nanabhai Palkiwala, in this case. It was his efforts that led to the courts laying down the principle of the basic structure doctrine. This doctrine says that the parliament does not have unlimited power and that it cannot alter democratic nature of the country based on fundamental rights and liberties. Second, this was not really a single case, but a series of 3 cases spanning across almost 2 decades. The first, the second, and the third judge's case. Fali Nariman was instrumental in assisting the court in these matters. They are hugely relevant because it is through these 3 judgments that we arrived at today's collegium system of judicial appointments, where the top 5 Supreme Court judges select and appoint judges. Number 3, the Golaknath case. This was among the first case where the Supreme Court ruled clarifying on the primacy of fundamental rights. The Supreme Court held that fundamental rights are protected against any arbitrary action from the state. Number 4, the RTI Act. The RTI Act faced several legal challenges. In fact, 2 specific ones, one in 2005, the other in 2012. And on both occasions, he argued in defense of the constitutionality of the RTI Act. And on both occasions, his arguments on transparency yielded 2 judgments where the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality. And finally, number 5, the Nebam Rabia case, with growing instances of conflict and friction between the elected chief ministers and governors. This case was critical in defining the limits of the governor's powers. After Fali Nariman's arguments, the top court held that governor's actions, like advancing in assembly session, could only be done on the aid and advice of the chief minister and council of ministers. And these are just his contributions as a lawyer. I'd need a lot more time explaining how he was as a person and his full impact of his public life. In a private conversation with me, a senior advocate remarked that they don't make him like him anymore.
Well, here, I completely agree with you, Ashmit. Thanks so much for joining us and taking us through the legacy that Fali Nariman leaves behind, one of the most iconic jurists this country has seen. With that, it is the end of an era for us here in the Indian media as well. Iconic radio presenter Amin Sayani has passed today, a distinct voice that became a hit with his show Bianca Geetmala. His show was a rage through the 1950s. Despite being a popular show, Sayani didn't want to make the transition to TV. In a career spanning over 6 decades, he produced and presented over 54,000 radio programs and lent his voice to over 19,000 ads. He was well known for his signature line, Namaskar Behno aur Bhaiyo, to welcome listeners. Well, with that, it is time for us to pay gratitude to both Fali Nariman and Amin Sayani and say goodbye to you on this edition of India Business Hour. From all of us here on the team, goodbye. Thanks for watching. The news continues.